So in my time in Taiwan for the full ordination, in the time preparing to leave, and in my time coming back and talking to people about it, I see that I've been using a lot of similes, analogies, and metaphors and talking about it or thinking about it before I went. And certainly this is an important part of how we communicate. And I see some ways in which this was helpful. So for instance, before I went, I was trying to think about what it might be like, and I was thinking like, okay, it might be like boot camp to kind of prepare myself for it, and it was not, in fact, like boot camp. Once I was there, I was trying to draw some parallels between my experience being in a foreign country where I don't really speak the language, or being in a place where there's a demanding schedule, and I could see some parallels to other experiences I've had in my life. And this helped me build my confidence. So in that way, these, saying like, oh, being here is like when I was in a Tibetan monastery in India. That was fun. That was something I could do. And with time, I could start to pick up bits of the language and know what was going on around me. So that built my confidence. Now, coming back, I see again a lot of these similes coming up in my language, especially trying to describe to people an experience that they maybe haven't had. So, for instance, the experience of being in the strong earthquake that we experienced while there, the strongest in Taiwan, I think, in 25 years. And, to say, well, what did it feel like? What was it like? Because I've been in minor earthquakes, especially in California, and I would describe it as, like a truck going by by the building. This one I would describe as being in a boat in very rough water. It felt like up and down and left and right, and I've been in boats, small boats, on very rough water, and that's what it felt like. And so, okay, that might communicate the idea. But where these analogies and metaphors perhaps are most important is when we're trying to communicate the emotional impact of something. And this is, of course, where poetry comes in, and many people more talented than me can use these sorts of similes to really describe that. And these similes really came to mind when thinking also about the earthquake, but not just, well, what did it feel like physically? What was the building doing? But what was going on around me? What was that emotional impact? And so the earthquake struck at around 8 a.m. in the morning there in Taiwan. We had started class on the Bhikshuni precepts, and so there was 160, 170 or so bhikshunis in the room that was our classroom and our dining room. And as it started, the bhikshuni who was teaching us the precepts, Bhikshuni Guangshun, she started chanting Amittofo, and everyone joined in. Now, for my training in California, I went under the table. And I was sitting in the back of the room and saw that no one else did this, except for Venerable Damcho and Venerable Children, who's from California. And I was really, really touched by this chanting again of almost 200 people chanting Amittofo, Amittofo, Amittofo. Not out of fear, not out of, well, at least I didn't sense fear, not out of panic. And what it brought to mind, the simile, if you will, is actually part of the safety video that Ava Airlines that we took to Taiwan and on the way back showed. And I haven't seen this in most other airlines videos. But after the bit on the seatbelt and on the oxygen masks coming down, there was then a part of the safety orientation of what will happen if the plane needs to make an emergency landing. The flight attendants will announce, brace, brace, brace. And the video then showed the position to take. And that's actually what this seems like in my mind. Everyone chanting Amittofo, 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 as if they were telling everyone around them what to do. Not panicking, not in their own, okay, let me take care of myself sort of way, but as a group saying, okay, we don't know what's about to happen. You know, just as if the plane was about to make an emergency landing, the flight attendants are going to help us do whatever we can, though we don't really know how it's going to turn out. We can at least take the brace position and hopefully it will turn out okay. And so everyone chanting Amittofo, not under the table. They had this confidence that that was what everyone needed to be doing. Again, led by our Bhikshuni Acharya. They needed to take refuge. They needed to turn their minds to their practice. And they needed to focus their mind on Amitabha Buddha, because if we were on the 4th floor of the building, if this giant temple was about to collapse on top of us, what did we want our mind to be doing? Thinking about Amitabha's Pure Land. Really being single-pointedly focused on Amitabha. And it was incredible to be in the room and just feel this power. And I don't know how long the earthquake lasted. I didn't look that up. It felt like minutes. And eventually the shaking stopped. I crawled out from under the table. And the Bhikshuni Acharya, who is a fairly short nun, even by Taiwanese standards, and she talked about that herself, stood up and made this proclamation, and I can't really do it justice. The adrenaline running through my veins at the time, I'm not sure how much I quite accurately remember. But she stood up and proclaimed something like, I, Bhikshuni Guangshun, am pure. The preceptors are pure. I thank the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Dharma protectors for protecting us, and dedicate the merit from these teachings for those who may have been injured or killed in this earthquake. Because of course at that point, we had no idea how far away the epicenter was, how strong it was. And again, I can't quite do her words justice. I can't embody the power that she had in that moment. But as an analogy, I would say it was like watching a wizard just channel otherworldly elements, or a superhero like Wonder Woman, you know, just standing strong, knowing that it was up to her to save the day and that she was capable of it. The faith and confidence in that moment really floored me. And there were some stronger aftershocks, and the Bhikshuni Acharya again led us through Amittofo, and I didn't feel the need to go under the desk after that. And everything was fine for us. Unfortunately, there were people injured and killed on the other side of the country where the earthquake had happened. So that might be the way in which these analogies and similes can be helpful, is trying to communicate these things where I can't get the words of the stories and I can't even act it out reasonably well, but that emotive aspect can maybe be communicated. On the other hand, there's lots of ways in which talking in terms of relating the experience to other things is not so helpful. And in particular, it really limits our understanding to what we already have some understanding of, what we already have some familiarity with. And I saw this when I first got to Taiwan and was talking about how Taiwan compared to India. And one of my kind Dharma sisters kind of pointed this out. You know, Taiwan is not like India, but I haven't been to that many places. So that was the best I could do to make sense of it. But by constantly looking at the situation through the lens of things I already knew, that would be a very small lens. And it's kind of like when you're driving on a rural mountain road at night and you don't have your bright lights on, just the normal headlights. You just see a little bit of the road. And so if all I'm doing is thinking about what I've already seen and experienced, it's like that. While instead I'm having these new experiences, and this new broader perspective could be like turning on the bright lights, the high beams, and just seeing everything around you. So in this way, there was much of the experience that was really incomparable. And when people were asking me to make comparisons, I really saw that, it's not so helpful to stay in that mindset. And, one is thinking about ordination and, say, comparing it to something like graduation. For me, high school graduation, I was certainly over high school like a year before graduating at least. And even college and grad school, I was already focused on the next step. I wasn't really focused on what was happening there then. And certainly that wasn't the case here. Pardon, you'll get to edit this. Okay. So certainly that wasn't the case there at ordination. It wasn't that, okay, now I'm over being a shikshamana, I'm over being a novice, and now I'm focused on the next thing. And it isn't even something new or an achievement the way graduation really marks, okay, you've achieved something. For me, thinking about full ordination and what it meant to become a bhikshuni was about really taking on more responsibilities, doing exactly what I have been doing, but now doing it more so, trying to practice the Vinaya more deeply. And so I found the comparison to, say, graduation or any sort of academic achievement, not at all comparable. And the second place that I saw kind of these similes really kind of driving away from the experience is doing the incense offering that we did as part of the Bodhisattva precepts. That beforehand, there was a lot of focus on, well, what does it feel like? How much does it hurt? And, is it like a bee sting or is it worse? That's really not the point. There is the thought that, okay, we are doing something that's a little bit uncomfortable. It is an ascetic practice in that regard. But to focus on the pain felt like missing the point of what we were doing. And so again, trying to focus on, okay, what was it like? What was it similar to? That's not so helpful in that regard. So I found it helpful for my own practice to think about this and to see how the more that I try to really focus on the experiences that I've already had, to understand what's coming, or focus on really new experiences that I'm having in the moment, it's very limiting. And especially when we try to think about becoming bodhisattvas, progressing along the path, having realizations, and becoming Buddhas, none of that is within the scope of things that I have experienced. So I need to really find a way to look at the experiences that I am having and that I will have in my life, not through the lens of what I have actually experienced, since that is just oh so narrow. But I wanted to close with a beautiful chant that we did at the ordination that includes similes that I found were quite helpful. And this is something that I would love to eventually see us include in our chanting here. And I won't actually try to chant it to the melody, but I'll just read the English. This day is already done. Our lives are that much less. We're like fish in a shrinking pond. What joy is there in this? We should be diligent and vigorous, as if our own heads were at stake. Only be mindful of impermanence and be careful not to be lax.